A town square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
He is hit! He stumbles! He's down!
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN Hump Day Wednesday edition of the show. Glad to have you all on board the show today. We are live on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and we are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show live in the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. It's a Wednesday. It's Hump Day. And you know, Dave Weinberg is going to join us coming up today at 6:20. His thoughts on the latest with the Eagles, the NFL. I know he's got some opinions about some other things like the Angels releasing Albert Pujols and this Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury thing. Is this thing really going to happen this time? I mean, no offense to anybody involved in that situation, but I feel like boxing is infamous for teasing us and not actually delivering on anything. So we'll get Dave Weinberg's perspective on all that coming up at 6:20 tonight. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Get on the conversation listening on 97.3 ESPN FM. Or if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can join the conversation right there on the live stream. NFL schedule release day is always a big day. It's always a big topic of conversation. But I would like to remind everyone about one thing about the schedule moving forward. With the situation with the schedule, okay, we know that every year there's a handful of games that we think are going to go one way and go completely differently when we get there. Injuries happen. There's all kinds of reasons why that happens. So as more and more leaks come out on the schedule, I just want to remind everybody that don't get too bent out of shape about the schedule one way or the other. And part of the reason why you can't get too bent out of shape is a point that I brought up to Mike Gill during 5 questions just about 15 minutes ago. We can't fully take what happened last year in the NFL as gospel. We absolutely can't. And here's why. When you look at what happened last year between COVID protocols, between teams not having preseasons, between the numerous injuries that totally decimated teams like the Eagles and the Cowboys, between situations like guys missing games for COVID or players opting out of the season. There were so many variables that went into what we saw happen last year. I don't know how much of last year I can take into this year yet. I'm taking what I saw in 2020 with a grain of salt, and maybe more like a pound of salt, depending on who you ask. So for me, at least, I'm looking at the schedules, I'm looking at the teams, I'm looking at all this stuff, and I have to ask the question, do we have to maybe reevaluate a little bit how we look at the NFL going into 2021, considering that 2020 was played under incredibly unique circumstances? So when Mike McGarry, the press of Atlantic City, said this earlier today on the Sports Bash, it really perked my ears up because the gears started churning in my brain. I started really processing about what will the NFC East look like for the 2021 season. This was Mike McGarry earlier on the Sports Bash.
The division's going to be better than it was last year. I mentioned that Prescott's coming back for Dallas. I also think that the Washington football team and the Giants have been bad for so long that they've been able to add some quality players, and eventually they're going to take a step forward. I think both teams won, 6 games last year. I think they're going to take a step forward into that 8 or 9 range. So I see the division winner having 9 wins, maybe 10, but mostly 9.
That is a strong possibility that the NFC East is better than it was last year. Now, some people may say, well, you have to be better. You were the second worst division statistically in NFL history. So you have to be better than you were last year. So I get that perspective, but I mean this in all sincerity. Look at the Cowboys. If Dak Prescott can play a full schedule this year, you don't think the Cowboys can't win 10 games? Of course they can. He's that good. Dak Prescott is that much of a difference maker. And if they can get their offensive line figured out and their defense can play better than last year, they're definitely a 9 or 10 win team for sure. Look at a team like Washington. They won the division with 4 mediocre to poor quarterbacks and a great defense. And you could argue their defense has gotten better this offseason, and their offense overall will look a little bit more functional, shall we call it, than they did last year. Last year you had the law firm of Haskins, Allen, Smith, Heineke at quarterback. And I'm not saying Ryan Fitzpatrick fixes all of their quarterback problems, but I have confidence that Fitzmagic will be able to get some more magic out of that situation. So for me, when I look at the NFC East, I'm starting to wonder. I'm looking at Dallas. I'm looking at Washington. I'm even looking at the Giants. They added a ton of receivers for this team. They added even more offensive line help for the Giants. You kind of have to wonder, are we looking at a situation where heading into next year, are all 4 teams in the division going to be significantly better? I'm telling you right now, there's a significant possibility of that. Now, I'm not promising you the Eagles are going to be a last to first team, but I will remind you that every year there is a team that goes from worst to first in the NFL. It's the way the schedules are set up. It's the way the league is structured. It's the league valuing parity. So there's a lot of reasons why that happens. But I think part of the reason why you got to remember about the Eagles as well is they had so many injuries last year. If they literally would have had half the injuries, they might have been a different team. If Carson Wentz doesn't make as many bad throws, they would have been in contention for the division. I genuinely have to wonder if we're going to see this division not just come down to the wire at the end of the year when we hit the December of 2021, but also have to wonder, is there a possibility that 3 of the 4 teams could all be around 8-9 wins at the end of the year, heading into that final week? I would argue that the Giants have the worst quarterback. Washington probably has the most question marks on offense. The Eagles have the most question marks on defense. And Dallas has the most question marks with their coaching staff. But none of those question marks completely eliminate those teams. So for me, the NFC East is going to be fascinating this coming year. And with the schedule released tonight, we got a lot of details on the Eagles schedule over at 97.3 ESPN.com. As I'm projecting out, as we all speculate about what's going to happen, the biggest question I keep rattling around in my head right now is this NFC East. Are they going to go from worst to first? Could the NFC East go from being the worst division of football last year to maybe one of the best in the NFC this year? Look at the AFC, look at the NFC South. No Drew Brees, so we don't really know what we're getting from the Saints as a whole. We assume they'll be a good team, but there's no guarantee of that. The Bucs are returning everybody. They're going to be good. Carolina, I don't know what they're going to be. They could be interesting, but I don't know how good they're going to be. They're going to be competitive. Falcons, they look like the traditional all offense, no defense kind of squad out there. Look at the NFC North. The drop off from Stafford to Goff is going to be significant. I think Detroit's in a rebuild mode. Is Aaron Rodgers even going to be on the Packers next year? If he's not, you can just drop them out of the contention conversation altogether. Chicago is going to surprise people with Justin Fields. When he gets on the field, he's going to shock some people. And that team has a good defense still. And look at the Vikings. Their defense can't be worse than it was last year. Their defense was horrible last year. Mike Zimmer even said so. And they've made some serious improvements this offseason to upgrade it. But I don't think they're a significantly great division. I think they're okay. The NFC West is very intriguing. But I have questions about Seattle's roster. How good is their roster? The Cardinals have made a lot of additions. But how do all those additions blend in and work together? Also, you're going to be asking a lot from a lot of young players defensively at the linebacker and secondary positions. Are the Cardinals going to have a great year with all that youth in the secondary? The 49ers had a ton of injuries last year. How do they rebound? And what if Jimmy G goes down and Trey Lance has to come in? That might be a very awkward and difficult situation for the 49ers to deal with. And of course, you have the Rams. I think the Rams got to be the favorite going into the division with the combination of Stafford joining them and the fact that they are returning some of their most important players next year. So there's a possibility that the NFC East, they won't be the worst division anymore. And it's going to be a lot more entertaining for football fans this coming year than what we saw last year. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Game Night being brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Listen, we've all had that dream. Tie game, bottom of the ninth, bases loaded. Well, on FanDuel Sportsbook, you get more than one shot to swing for the fences because FanDuel is letting you place your first bet risk-free. That's right. New users get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. There's a reason why FanDuel Sportsbook is America's #1 sportsbook. They've got great odds in all different betting markets with unique and fun bet types like same-game parlays and always-on promotions to let you get more action out of every game day. And when you win, FanDuel will pay your winnings as little as 24 hours. So if you want your first bet risk-free, up to $1,000, get on the FanDuel Sportsbook app or go to sportsbook.fanduel.com. Sign up with my promo code Hennig to get on all the action. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 to order play and present NJRPA. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund issues, non-withdrawable site credit that expires 7 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Real quick before we hit the break also, I wanted to touch on the Sixers game last night. The Sixers game was incredibly disappointing, all right? They could have and should have won that game last night. But ultimately, I don't think we can overlook the fact that that team shot horribly from three. You had guys like Seth Curry, Danny Green, and others who just couldn't hit from the outside. And you could argue that Mike Scott probably got too much playing time last night. I think a combination of a lot of factors led to that loss. And for me, I'm watching the game and I'm thinking, is this Sixers team going to hit a shot anytime soon? When Ben Simmons is hitting fadeaways and Seth Curry, fadeaway mid-range jumpers, and Seth Curry and Danny Green can't hit threes, you kind of have to chalk up the loss to realize some things are just not meant to be. The Sixers' magic number is still at 1. They have a chance to lock it up Thursday night versus the Heat. You can hear the action tomorrow night on 97.3 ESPN. But when I'm looking at the Sixers game last night, I'm genuinely wondering, is the thing that would doom the Sixers from winning an NBA title this year the same thing that doomed the Rockets while Daryl Morey was in Houston? Every time the Rockets got cold from three-point shooting, their team just failed. They choked. Now, part of it was James Harden not playing well certain playoff series. Part of it was Chris Paul's injury limited their ability to run the offense part of it properly. Part of it was the fact that yet you went out there and didn't have a traditional offense because Mike D'Antoni insisted on the running gun craziness that he loves to run. He was completely inflexible of doing anything else. But when the Rockets took the Warriors 7 games, I can't get out of my memory how poorly they shot in that game 7. And I have to wonder, after watching that Pacers game last night. Is there a possibility that Joel Embiid goes for 35 points, Ben Simmons to the triple-double, Tobias Harris goes for 20 and 8, and they still lose the game in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals because as a team, they potentially shoot 6 for 24 from 3? Something to think about. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it's not true, but it did create a little bit of question in my mind about the Sixers' viability moving forward. All right, coming up next, we're going to be joined by Dave Weinberg for a Weinberg Wednesday. We'll talk some Eagles, talk some baseball, talk some boxing, and more coming up with Dave right here for a Weinberg Wednesday on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea City. And we are live at the Matt Black Kia Studios as you are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You join the conversation, just drop it below here on 97.3 ESPN. Follow us on all social media platforms to watch the Sports Bash with Mike Gill and Game Night with Josh Hennig Monday through Friday.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Here's Seth for 3, and that's good. Curry is 6 for 6 from 3.
The Sixers host the Detroit Pistons tomorrow. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
You asked for it. You got it. Fast Track Checkout at either Matt Blatt Kia location. Buy it your way. Complete your purchase online or have us deliver it. Purchase any new or pre-owned vehicle from Matt Blatt Kia in Egg Harbor Township or Toms River with 0 money down and 0% APR financing for 60 months on every 2021 Kia Soul, Sportage, or Forte. Plus, we need your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate with 0 down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 60 months. Try Fast Track Checkout. Purchase completely online and have us deliver right to your home or office. Only at Matt Blatt Kia, where you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 5/31/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
All right, is that a Q2 or Q3 expense?
Dwayne's CPA went MIA.
W9.
To keep his books and his sanity, he needs to find a replacement ASAP.
Hey, Johnny, have you ever heard of a fungible good?
Indeed can help him hire the people he needs.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job, you immediately get your short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job criteria. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be signs that your digestive system isn't working at its best? But taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil supports your daily digestive health using a special plant-based fiber called psyllium. Psyllium works by forming a gel in your digestive system to trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Metamucil's gelling action also helps to promote heart health and slows down sugar absorption to promote healthy blood sugar levels. Start feeling lighter and more energetic by taking Metamucil every day.
East Coast Roofing and Siding, protecting what you love and own.
Listen up, South Jersey. East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows is kicking off 2021 by giving back to our community. We're introducing the 2021 Economic Relief Program. For a limited time, when you hire East Coast to do your roofing, siding, window, or door project, you could qualify for no money down and no payments or interest for 12 months. Plus, when the job is done, we'll send you a rebate check for up to 15% of the cost. That means you won't pay until 2022, and we'll put money back in your pocket. Go to eastcoastroofing.com or call us today at 609-646-1444 to schedule your free consultation. Remember, South Jersey, if you'll call, we'll show up.
East Coast Roofing and Siding, protecting what you love and own. East Coast Roofing and Siding, trust us with your family and home.
If you own a small business, you know how hard it can be to find new customers. Now, Town Square Media has new tools that can help your business stand out and grow. Go to GetLocalCustomersNow.com for a free competitive analysis that will show you what other businesses are doing to find new customers and how you can do it too with Town Square Media. Be one of the first business owners to sign up and receive $500 in free advertising on this station. Start growing your business today. Visit GetLocalCustomersNow.com. That's GetLocalCustomersNow.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to your thoughts and comments at 609-403-0973 in just a bit. Put your comment as well on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as you watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. Get to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with Josh Hennig. All the shows right here on 97.3 ESPN. But before we get to your thoughts and comments, joining us right now on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline is as each and every Wednesday to talk more about some football, maybe get some baseball, a little boxing as well. We have Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday right here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So, obviously today is NFL's schedule release day. Everybody is losing their minds and already trying to predict losses. But the big thing I thought coming out of this is, whatever the schedule really lays out to be, at the end of the day, my big question for you is there a possibility that the NFC East is going to be a lot better than we all anticipate going into 2021 season?
I guess there's a possibility. I'm not really sure. It's really difficult to determine how this schedule is going to play out, especially when I do it every year for the Eagles. I tend to I go down the list and I predict every game just to have some fun.
Not just you, Dave. So we all do it.
Yeah. And it's supposedly the Eagles have the easiest schedule in the league, according to some people, and they do have a last place schedule, but you never know how those teams are going to, just because they stunk last year doesn't mean they're going to stink this year. And that includes the Eagles as well. I mean, they could very well be better. But it's so hard to try and predict what's going to happen, without taking into account injuries and benchings and trades and unexpected releases and that kind of stuff. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it, but it is fun to speculate anyway. And I guess in theory, the NFC East could be better than they were last year. I mean, it's kind of tough to be worse.
Right. Well, it's tough to be worse than the second worst division in NFL history.
Right.
The bigger reason why I'm wondering also because I'm starting to wonder, because the more and more I look at deeper things, Dave, I'm starting to wonder how much can we really take from last year because of all the COVID protocol, because of all the the opt-outs. I mean, the Patriots had with 8 guys opt out of their season who were all starters. You had all the numerous injuries for teams like the Eagles and the Cowboys and the 49ers. There's part of me that wonders, how much can we really take from last year going into this year, knowing that last year was a one-of-a-kind, unique situation?
Sure. I mean, let's talk about the Cowboys not having Dak Prescott for the bulk of the year. I mean, he's going to be back, and that he makes all the difference in the world for Dallas. Saquon Barkley, same thing with the Giants. He missed the most of last year also. So, yeah, just to have the two of the most dynamic players in the NFL back in the division, that's going to make things that much tougher for the Eagles. Plus, the Eagles have such a learning curve here with the new coach, a new coaching staff, so many new players. It's really going to be a wait-and-see approach with the Eagles, I think. It's just I'm not really quite sure what to make of them just yet. It's going to take a little while before I can.
Now, the Eagles did make a very interesting move since the last time you and I spoke here on Game Night, and that is Kerryon Johnson. And it seems like the Eagles are pretty serious about this whole being competitive thing that Sirianni keeps bringing up, because to me, Kerryon Johnson, Jordan Howard, Kenneth Gainwell, they all kind of do similar things. So you have to wonder, how serious are they going into this saying, hey, the best man wins? Because we know Miles Sanders is the number 1 back, but it seems like based on Sirianni and Steichen's backgrounds, they like their number 2 and 3 backs to be weapons as well.
Yeah, that's true. I'm curious how Kerryon fared in the rock, paper, scissors challenge. I guess he was pretty competitive. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the more competition you have at each position, the better off you're going to be. And you're right. I mean, Miles Sanders is certainly locked in as the number one guy. But you have, you can say, Karen Johnson, Gainwell, Jordan Howard, Boston Scott, a couple other guys that are all going to be vying for playing time here, and that's the mood you want to create. You want to create a competitive atmosphere as much as you can. I mean, there are certain guys who are locked in as starters and as key backups, obviously, and they're not going to they don't have to compete for their job, despite what Sirianni says. But the more the guys fighting for a roster spot and and fighting for a key role in the team, the better off you're going to be down the road.
Dave Weinberg joining us for Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. His extra point columns are over at 97.3ESPN.com, at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Dave, one more NFL point I wanted to ask you about, and that is, how do you think this situation with the voluntary versus mandatory mini camps going to work out? Because last year we had no OTAs, no mini camps, no NFL preseason, and now this year, basically the majority of the league's players are saying we're not going to go to any voluntary workouts. We're only going to go to mandatories that we have to go to.
Mm-hmm.
The impact could that be, or is there no impact potentially from that?
It depends on the team. I think it's going to have a big impact on the Eagles, only because, like we've said, often on the show, that there's so much turnover. You have a brand new coaching staff. The more the work you can get together as a team, the better off you're going to be. Especially after last year with no OTAs, no mini camps, no preseason, no training camp, and those guys need the work in order just to get acclimated with Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon's systems. And I understand. I somewhat understand the reasoning behind it. There are some, I don't want to say unnecessary, but they do kind of pack too many camps, I think, in there in some cases. But with the Eagles, in the Eagles instance, I think that they should be there. They're not going to be, but I think it's going to hurt them down the road.
Yeah, the other thing I'm also curious about is, this will be the second straight year Jalen Hurts he didn't go to rookie camp last year. So now it's potential he might not be there for voluntary camp. So then, he's got a little bit more than last year. But if he's supposed to be your starting quarterback, I know he's not the only one going through this, but I just have these things churning in my head. There's part of me that wonders, how much can they really put on his shoulders, considering that this is now 2 off seasons where he's not getting the traditional preparation that quarterbacks got in the past?
Right, and especially like we said with Sirianni introducing a new system, that's something that Jalen's going to have to learn. And if you don't have that those extra camps in order to get comfortable with the system, learn the plays, get comfortable working with the other guys. I mean, you can go away to Texas or what have you all you want in the summer and have some sort of bonding experience, but that doesn't replace actually being on the field and going against corners and safeties and everything. And Jalen's going to be behind the 8 ball, because this, like I said, this is another season with no off season, and it's another season with a brand new system that he has to learn.
Dave, let's flip it over to baseball. Obviously, you and everybody else was shocked and surprised when the Angels decided to dismiss Albert Pujols the way they did. First of all, I'm surprised they didn't just dismiss him. I'm surprised he hasn't been picked up yet, because the guy still has a little juice left in that bat. But nonetheless, this really has a strange feel, because Mike Trout wasn't happy with it. And you got to keep your superstar happy. You didn't give him all that money and try to, quote unquote, build around him just to kind of pull the rug out from under him. It feels like a really strange situation out there with the Angels.
Yeah, and Joe Madden is known as a player's kind of manager, so I was a little surprised, and I can't help but think that Mike didn't have much of a say in this. I think that they kind of went over his head a little bit, which is strange because, like you said, he is the linchpin of that franchise. They gave him all that money. He's the face of the Angels, so you think they would at least have asked his input. And I have a hard time believing that he would have said, go ahead and release Albert, because I spent a little bit of time out there a couple years ago in spring training, and I noticed the bond between Albert and Mike. I mean, Mike was playing with Albert's kids, during the breaks and stuff, and they were always joking around and laughing. And I know that Mike considers Albert a mentor, and the fact that he's gone, I'm be curious to see how that affects him, going forward.
I mean, I don't think it'll affect him too much on the field, but maybe
probably not.
Off the field, how is that relationship? Because he just signed that massive extension to stay with the Angels, and you have to wonder, did they do what was best for the team, or did they do what was best for one specific guy, Mr. Walsh, who was playing well, and they didn't want to take at bats away from him? And sometimes I wonder, and maybe this is just the media coverage, maybe this is just me kind of scratching my head about things, but I feel like there's so much love for Shohei Ohtani at times that people forget that Mike Trout is literally, not figuratively, literally having an historic season, but yet all I hear about is Shohei Ohtani pitching and hitting. And I feel like sometimes, Mike is getting a little lost in the sauce.
Probably not out there, but yeah, nationwide, you're probably right. I mean, Ohtani's kind of like the new toy, so to speak. I mean, when's the last time you had a guy pitching and hitting? I mean, I don't know if it's been done since Babe Ruth, really. And every movie that he makes is so scrutinized by the Japanese media, and even now the national media too. They just find it. I guess you just find it unique that there's somebody that can be able to do both things. But you're right. I mean, push come to shove, Trout is the guy who carries that team, and I'm sure that the people kind of realize that. I would hope they do, at least the Angels fans.
Yeah, you at least hope they do. Mike Trout, I mean, the poor guy, he's down to batting 355 now instead of 400.
Yeah, what a slump, huh?
Real slump right there. Right? It's like 95% of the league would die to bat 355, So it's like, it's one of those deals where, it's just that watching him is just impressive. And like you've said before, Dave, you got to make sure you're up at night to watch some of these games, because it feels like every night, he's going up there. He is one of maybe 5 baseball players to me that is must watch baseball when he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to miss a game when he's there, because you never know. He can do, just do something special, and it doesn't have to be at the plate. I mean, he'll make a spectacular catch or a great throw, or even just as even like off the field, just the way he interacts with kids and stuff. It's such a special thing, and I wish that more players would be able to take the time to do that, because we're losing a generation of baseball fans here if they haven't already been lost. And the more that the guys like Mike Trout and the other superstars if they can do to bring those kids back into baseball. Just to give you an example, Lower Townships Little League. When my son's 30, going to be 36. When he was in Little League, there were probably 26 teams. I think 2 divisions of 13. Now there are 2 teams, and it's just a sad thing that the way the kids are just. I mean, I can't fault them. They want to play lacrosse. Go ahead. I mean, who am I to say no? But it just seems like baseball is like dying with the kids that are that should be falling in love with the game, and I'm hoping that can be turned around at some point.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, you've been covering boxing for a long time. And I want to ask you a couple of boxing questions, because boxing has been in the news in the last week and a half. First of all, I got to start with, so is this Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua thing actually going to happen? Is this legitimate, or are we going to get another Forgazzi situation here?
Yeah, I'll believe it when it happens. They've been close before, and there's always been talk that that is the fight everybody wants to see. But it just seems like invariably somebody puts a stick in the spokes just as they're about to take off and make it a reality. So I mean, I'm kind of holding my breath, but not too much, because I can't just bring myself to actually believe it until I see those two in the ring together.
Yeah, because for me, like you said, you said it perfectly. We all want to see the fight. That's the fight that everybody wants. That's the spectacle everybody wants. But it feels like There's been 20 excuses from Sunday. I understand COVID-19 pandemic probably hurt some of it as well, but it just feels like at some point it's like, this is the fight. Whatever you got to do to make it happen, just do it. And now it's going to be in Saudi Arabia, and it's going to be later in the year, and all these stipulations about what time of day and night it's going to be because it's in Saudi Arabia. So there's a part of me that's just wondering, like, what is going on here, Dave?
Yeah, just go to Wembley Stadium and put it in there, because that's where you're going to draw, I don't know, 100,000+ people for that. I mean, why are you going out of the country? That doesn't make some sense to me. Have it over in Europe where you're going to draw a huge crowd if you want, or Vegas, or God forbid Boardwalk Hall. That would never happen. But yeah, it's just Just get it done already and fight like everybody wants you to.
Now, a fight that did happen over the weekend was Canelo Alvarez literally just running over Billy Joe Saunders. And I'm wondering, because I've heard other people ask this question, I wanted to ask it to you because, Dave, you're not just someone who covers boxing. You understand the history of the sport as well. Where does Canelo fall into the history of the sport? Because, you know, he's one of those guys where a lot of people know who he is. People are familiar with him. But what is his standing in the history of the sport? Not just right now, but overall.
Boy, that's a tough question, Josh. I think it's too soon to kind of anoint him as among the all-time greats. I just don't think he's fought enough. I don't think he's achieved enough. I mean, no disrespect to him, but I mean, Floyd Mayweather took him to school when they fought, and so I have a hard time, putting him in the pantheon, so to speak, of the Haglers and the Hearns and the Alis and the Frasers and Sugar Ray Robinson and Floyd, whoever you want to put in there. I mean, he's certainly on his way, and if he keeps up at his current pace, I think he'll earn his spot in the top 10 or what have you, top 15. But I think it's way too early to give him those kind of accolades just yet.
Now, I know he's only 30 years old, but what is really next for him at this point? Because he basically holds, I feel like it's every single belt now at this point after the fight?
I think it's 3 of the 4. I think there's one other super middleweight champion. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. I know he wants to unify the titles, and there's one more fight out there for him. I know Canelo's really popular, and he's really improving as a fighter, but I'm just questioning. I know I'm in the minority here, but everybody's talking about how he's increased his power and he's this knockout specialist and nobody can stand up. Billy Joe Sanders didn't go down last time I checked. And the guy he fought before, Caleb Plant, didn't go down. Granted, he wore them down and made them basically quit on their stools, but nothing thrills a crowd like a knockout, like seeing that guy flat on his back on the canvas. And I'm just wondering why people are so enamored with Canelo's. I mean, I understand why they're enamored with him. He is a terrific fighter, but I just don't see the one punch power that excites everybody in boxing.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because a lot of times, for example, a sport that I'm, that I'm in love with MMA. People always bring up, for example, well, how many finishes does he have on his resume? Like a guy like George St. Pierre. People will say, well, is he one of the greatest of all time? Then you're like, yeah, but he didn't finish anybody. So it's like hard to like certain fighters if they're not dominating the competition. And it feels like for Canelo, at least for me, when I watch him, I'm wondering sometimes he's a super talented boxer, but like, is he dominant enough to really say he's one of fill in the blank number of greats all time? And I just wonder, like, is he ever going to be able to get to that point?
I'm sure he will. I mean, he is 30 and he's a man now as opposed to a kid, but I still think there's room for improvement with him, and which is encouraging. Normally guys who are like, in their early 30s or what have you, they kind of reach their peak as a fighter. But I still think that there's room for him to get better, and it's going to be exciting to see his journey, to see how he can incorporate power to go along with his superior boxing, his defense, his chin. And you're right, he is a terrific fighter, and I think he can still get better, which is an exciting to see.
All right, Dave, one more before I let you go, and I'm glad you're sitting down because you might have a little bit too hard at the next thing I'm going to ask you about. So in UFC recently, Weili Zhang lost her belt, the Rose Namajunas, and now all of a sudden they're coming out and claiming that she wasn't prepared to deal with fans in the stands for as vocal as they were down in Florida, because down in Florida they had a sold out house for a UFC fight, and apparently her coaches are claiming that the crowd affected her ability to focus. And I'm just thinking, wait a minute. So we didn't have fans for a year. Now all of a sudden you're telling me 15,000 fans is going to completely destroy the focus of someone who had the championship belt. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm starting to wonder, I mean, are we just creating excuses at this point just to create excuses for fighters when they don't win?
Yeah, I'm not buying that even a little bit. She's fought among in front of bigger crowds than that, I would think. And yeah, I mean, I guess it took some. I would think it would be more understandable if she had lost with no fans in the stands. That seems to me like that would be the most difficult thing to get used to, as opposed to having people back in the bleachers. That makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, it was one of the strangest things I heard, and all I could think of was, man, is that going to be the new thing now as we move forward with sports? Is there were too many fans in the stands. I wasn't used to it. Like, what's going to happen if the Sixers get to the Eastern Conference Finals and the Wells Fargo Center is sold out with almost 20,000 people? What are they going to say? Oh, I couldn't focus on the free throw line because there were more fans than I expected. Like, is that going to be the new excuse we have for the next few months, that these athletes are quote unquote adjusting the fans back to the building?
Yeah, I would think they'd be feeding off the crowd as opposed.
That's
to
what I
using
think.
it as
Right?
an excuse. Yeah, that's ludicrous. Yep.
I feel like we're creating a whole new horrible precedent with that. Thanks Wei Li Zhang for creating a potential monsters. But you heard it here first that the excuses are coming. He's Dave Weinberg at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out his extra point columns over at 973ESPN.com and his podcast Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. And as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Dave, always appreciate chatting with you. We'll catch you next week.
All right, Josh. Thanks again. I appreciate it. Talk to you next week.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We're going to get to your thoughts and comments. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I see comments from Paul and Jeremy. I'm going to get to you guys coming up on the other side of the break. Plus, we are going to go to the text board, 609-403-0973, as well, to hear from you guys out there here on a Wednesday, Hump Day Wednesday, here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Download it from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, where you can customize your alerts. You want Eagles updates. You want Sixers, Phillies, Flyers, high school sports. Customize your alerts right now with the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Get the stories and the news at 97.3ESPN.com before anyone on Twitter or on Facebook or even people just surfing the web find out. You get the alerts before other people see it with the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Download it for free right now. And yes, it is powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
Today on the NBA on ESPN Radio.
Russell Westbrook is up there in the conversation of great point guard runs of all time.
The final week of the regular season is upon us, and the fight for the postseason seeding continues when Russell Westbrook and the Washington Wizards head to Atlanta to face Trae Young and the Hawks. It's the NBA on 97.3 ESPN, your exclusive home for the NBA Finals. Coverage begins at 7 p.m.
Some models exclude score bet with GM financing. Excludes prior sale. See dealer for details.
Many car dealers all around the area are having trouble getting inventory, so they're jacking up prices big time. But at Bennett Chevy, we haven't changed a thing. Why would we? You said you love our GM supplier employee pricing. You pay what our supplier employees pay, not a penny more. Bennett also gives you all the rebates, which can add up to a whopping 25% off MSRP. Plus, Bennett's got available 0% financing that'll save you thousands more. Looking for used? Good news. Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for any trade you bring us, regardless of condition or miles. Any old Heath is worth a minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. And our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, so there's no pressure ever. And Bennett Chevy is now an authorized lease return center for all brands. So now more than ever, there's just no beating Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevrolet, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night, Hump Day today, edition of 97.3 ESPN. Yes, we have NBA basketball coming up tonight. Not the Sixers. Sixers are off tonight, but the Hawks versus the Wizards. That Wizards team could be a dangerous team for somebody in the first round. You know, maybe a team like the Nets, if they're not fully healthy, or a team like the Bucks. They could be a frustrating problem for somebody in the first round. Hawks could make a run in the playoffs as well. So two very interesting teams. Little, underdog kind of teams. Teams that are maybe not superstars on the level of like a team like the Nets or the Sixers. But Trae Young, Russell Westbrook, two of the best guards in the league. 7 o'clock basketball coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, as promised, I love to hear from you guys as well. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I will get to the thoughts from Jeremy and Paul in just a moment, but I'm getting the messages. They come in the order that they came in. First, Croce chimes in at 609-403-0973, says, Josh, I don't think Doc Rivers knows how to stagger the lineup for the playoffs. I'm nervous going in the round one. That's from Croce. Well, first of all, Croce, I think you're forgetting that Doc Rivers did win an NBA championship with the Boston Celtics, and he was very good at staggering those lineups. And you could argue that he could have gotten to the NBA Finals with those Clippers teams that had Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, Jamal Crawford. But you know what? Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, they choked in some of those games. So you kind of have to wonder. Doc's history tells us that he is a good playoff coach, but sometimes his players have let him down. And I don't know if Doc doesn't know how to stagger the lineups. I think the problem for the Sixers is that when you don't have everyone healthy, it's hard to gauge what will versus won't work. And I'm not blaming Doc for that, but I'm just saying as a reality that when you don't have Embiid and Simmons has a good but not great game, and Tobias Harris has a good but not great game, and the rest of the team only hits 8 threes on, I think it was, 26 attempts? It was a horrible shooting night last night for the Sixers. So I can't blame Doc for that. I think what Doc is going to do is he is going to do a lot of this on a matchup basis. I think that's why they will have success. Don't hold last year's Clippers team against Doc. I think a lot of what you saw with last year's Clippers was more of a byproduct of being in the bubble than it was on Doc Rivers. So I would say, Croce, give him a chance to show that, last year wasn't an example of who he is overall. All right. Couple more thoughts in here. Dan EHT, I will get to your point in just a moment. But first of all, I mentioned get to everybody's comments in the order they came in. Let's head over to YouTube. Jeremy chimes in because we were talking a little bit MMA. He says, off topic. Did you see those Diego Sanchez meeting videos? Absolutely wild. Here's the thing, Jeremy. Diego Sanchez is not in the UFC for a very good reason. And he's been going down a very dark path for a very long time. And whether those videos ever came out or not, Diego has been saying some very weird stuff, we'll call it, for about 10, 15 years now. This is a guy who's got some psychological profile questions. This is a guy who claims he's been on a spiritual journey, but it feels like he's gone in the opposite direction with that spiritual journey. People usually go on a spiritual journey and they find God and they become like a different person or a better person. And Diego, he found a God and he found something and he became a weirder person instead of a better person. And I think of those videos and the fact that his coaches and his people were asking the UFC for some very strange things that led them to question if he was of good mind to even be in the UFC anymore. So I hope the best for Diego Sanchez, but I think the world is better off with him not in the UFC anymore. I think that is a fact of life. Let's get to Dan EHT 609-403-0973. Dan says, I think that the Carson Wentz is going to regret leaving the Eagles. The Eagles have the easiest schedule and a true number one receiver now. Could have been last of first in a championship run, but Wentz didn't want to be here. Well, Dan, here's the thing. I think, Dan, that Wentz didn't want to be here no matter what the situation was. I think that Wentz was not interested in competing for the job when it came to the quarterback position. I think that he was too interested in being a hero instead of being coached up. There's a lot of stories about him being someone who pushes a back against good coaching. So I don't know if Wentz will regret leaving. I think he's better off in Indianapolis. I think Indianapolis fits his personality. He's a laid back guy. He's a country guy. He's from the Midwest. He's not a city boy, and I think he's better off not being here. And I think everyone will be better off with him not being here. Jeff Bonapookie agrees with me. We're better off without Wentz. You're right. Hodor the Horrific says on YouTube, I love Doc. There's a legitimate reason to be concerned about his rotations. There's no reason for Mike Scott to be getting these minutes. Well, Mike Scott was getting those minutes was because of the fact that there was no Joel Embiid. And who are you going to put up there? Anthony Tolliver? Paul Reed? Maybe Paul Reed. I could have maybe seen a little more Paul. But I think that this idea that, Mike Scott shouldn't be getting any minutes in a scenario where there's no Joel Embiid. Who else is going to guard Domantas Sabonis? Certainly not me. I'm about a foot shorter than Domantas. All right. Josh Hennig, this is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night. I'll see you all tomorrow.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff. Learn more, live better.
If we eat while we're on the phone, standing up, or watching TV, the calories don't actually count, right? If only that were true. They're called sneaky calories. While our mind may not pay attention, our body remembers every bite. They sneak in